Several Indian government accounts, including the account of the UGC, the IMD, the account of the UPCMO, and scores of other handles were recently hacked. According to data released by the government, more than 600 social media accounts of the central government were hacked in the last 5 years. Experts say this is just the tip of the iceberg. The actual unreported, undetected hacking cases of government accounts may run into several thousand.
When I started the CERT in 2005, there were only few thousand incidents there. When I left CERT in 2015, there were 100,000 incidents there. But today there are 700,000 incidents are there. This shows that the porosity in the system, cyber system, IT system is on increase there.
These kind of repeated hacks into the official handles represent a kind of a cyber attack. These attacks are targeted against Indian official handles, Indian official critical information infrastructure, and Indian official networks, so that somehow the effort can be made so as to create a feeling of distrust and mistrust amongst the general population users. Why? Because if the official handles can get hacked and the government cannot prevent the same, then it actually presents a very disturbing image to the normal lay population, that if the governmental official handles are not secure, surely their own handles or their own devices are not necessarily secure.
As far as cyber breaches are concerned, email account hacking seemed to be the most prevalent among all attacks. Emails provide hackers with a doorway to the world of an entity's cyber footprints. Yet, it is most underrated, and email hackings often go unnoticed.
There were some 85 or 87, 88,000 of these incidents which were basically against government organizations. A lot of them actually happened through email, okay, and some of them happened through various other routes. So let's look at email. Email is something that obviously the government and its personnel, its bureaucrats, everybody, they've been using for a long time. They've been using for maybe a couple of decades at least. But it is still not, hasn't got the status of, critical infrastructure in terms of the entire SOP of operations. Why would they bother to hack a person's email? Because they know that in that email, there's a lot of other stuff and there could be other passwords. Some people actually keep passwords stored in their email, So in Gmail, search for passwords, and for many people, you'll actually find one mail or an attachment which has a bunch of passwords. And that leads to the secondary thing. Okay, maybe there's a password for his NIC mail or his government mail account or whatever. So through email, you can actually get into systems in a fairly significant and worrying way.
When I enter into one system, let's say I can't enter into a office A which security was uptight, but because I'm sitting in home, I entered. Now this person entered into one of the key management personal's email account, entered there. From that email, he sent emails to 40 employees of that institute. Now 40 employees, because it is coming from your boss, opened that link. They opened the link, their all system became vulnerable. From those 20 systems, you will not even know that they are attacked. They can sit silently also at some times. From there, they get into some IT system of yours, and then your entire system, your entire unit, your organization becomes weak despite having uptight security measures taken care of.
The Parliamentary Panel on Information Technology recently identified an urgent need to boost the workforce at the National Informatics Centre. Not just at the NIC, cyber experts say India has a huge shortage of qualified and certified cyber professionals.
There is a need for more manpower, but skilled manpower. Okay, for which money is required. The people need to be trained, skilled there. Okay, so money is required. My tools are becoming more sophisticated. Tools are becoming more costly. So I need more money to buy tools, a manpower, a trained manpower,
We've been finding that there's a need for investing massively in capacity building. A couple of years back, there was a NASSCOM survey which said that India required 5 lakh cybersecurity professionals. And then they revised it to fact that we now require 10 lakh cybersecurity professionals. Though the actual annual output of India in terms of generating cybersecurity professionals is appalling into few thousands and not even into lakhs.
CERT-In, for example, I know has through back channels we know that they do have a shortage of manpower. They aren't able to look at always look at more. I don't want to say trivial, but say a relatively smaller scale attack on say one company. And if they can't do that adequately, it's obvious that for large government critical infrastructure, they aren't going to address these things.
India still does not have a dedicated national law on cybersecurity. Budgetary constraints and lack of a comprehensive cyber crisis management plan have made our cyber systems prone to espionage and attacks.
India has done nothing in terms of coming up with its own dedicated national laws on cybersecurity. Much unlike other countries like China, Singapore, Vietnam, Australia, we find India has chosen not to come up and legislate its own national law on cybersecurity. And that, I think, is a big grey zone which I believe the government needs to address.
The government of India has a norms that the 10% of the 1 to 3% of the budget of a ministry should be allocated for the IT e-governance activity there. That's the ministry, the government of India norm there. But if I tell you the international norms there, international norms are there. The 10% of the budget is kept for IT purposes, and the 1% of the IT budget is allocated towards the security. But these norms, whether Indian or international norms, are not followed strictly in India.
India's Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT-In, had recently issued 68 advisories for organizations and users to help mitigate cyber fraud. CERT-In has also constituted a cyber crisis management plan for countering cyber attacks. But many say much more needs to be done to protect our organizations and critical sectors.
Very recently, MIT, when asked about these, cyber attacks on critical infrastructures, they claimed that there were no cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. That was reported to the NCIIPC. So, and again, one more point to note here is that despite this very evident and this looming threat of online financial frauds, as a result of that, RBI doesn't maintain any data on the financial losses that are caused due to cyber attacks. So, I think transparency and accountability can also improve the situation by a whole lot.
We often see though people don't use anti-spyware, anti-viruses, or they may not have updated their OS, and those patches have to be updated, and the technologies that are available, use of DLP, use of VPNs, all our security mechanisms. There are 16-17 points of security checks which have to be complied with, in terms of due diligence and securing accounts.
The Government of India has also created the National Cyber Coordination Centre, an operational cybersecurity and e-surveillance agency to ramp up India's fight against cyber attacks. But many have expressed concerns that the agency could be used as a body to encroach on citizens' privacy, as India still lacks explicit privacy laws that could protect civil liberties.
There are a couple of, I won't go into many details because we know this is still active. But we know, and we've been trying to petition the CERT-In and the government, and we've had some response so far. But we know there's a certain government database which stores a lot of government records, whose search results can be found through a simple Google search. If you enter the correct indices and search terms, you're able to pull up, say, random data not from, say, relatively benevolent data like scheme beneficiaries, to say addresses of certain bureaucrats.
There is no denying the fact that the governmental numbers have got no connection with the ground reality. The actual ground reality is far worse. Basis the work that I do in terms of advising clients and doing work with other stakeholders, I can clearly tell you that the official figures have not even an iota of a connection with the ground reality. For example, if you look at the latest NCRB figures, it only talks about a couple of hundred cyber crimes in 1 year in a particular state. Now, what are we talking about this at a time when we are seeing hundreds of cyber crimes on a daily basis?
The Indian government introduced the Personal Data Protection Bill in 2019 to protect the personal data of individuals. But in reality, to what extent this data protection frameworks can uphold an individual's right to privacy is a matter of debate.
If you look at the incoming Personal Data Protection Bill or the bill recommended by the JPC on the Personal Data Protection Bill, neither of them have very good ways to deal with breaches. In the case of, for example, private infrastructure, if my database is breached, I'm going to notify the Data Protection Authority, who will then decide whether it's worth sort of notifying that, right? So you're basically, it's very lax, at least on private entities and also on the government, when it comes to sort of just reporting breaches. So users know that data is attacked.
So this National Data Protection Bill will create a mandatory situation for all these data processors who collect data to secure at a reasonable standards, and in case they fail to secure, they will have high penalties.
Since 2015, India has witnessed a steep rise in cybersecurity breaches. Between 2018 and 2021, there was an over 5-fold jump in the number of cybercrime incidents. Experts believe that the current Information Technology Act is toothless and India needs bold cybersecurity laws.
India already has in place its national cyber law, which is the Information Technology Act 2000. However, it's not a cyber security law, though this law got amended in the year 2008, and we gave a legal definition to the concept of cyber security, and we did put some provisions on cyber security. The fact remains is that we don't have dedicated legal frameworks on cyber security. That becomes of paramount importance.
We are also thinking of having an amendment in the Information Technology Act to bring in more holistic law, to bring in more definitions where a cyber crime is concerned, because Information Technology Act per se was, when it came in 2000, it was more for e-commerce platform and giving recognition to digital signatures and digital document.
I think there are some broad provisions in the IT Act, but they're very minimal. For example, Section 43 provides some compensation for negligent handling of sensitive data, but it's I don't know how many people are actually able to utilize that. And that's only for sensitive data, but there's other data that does get leaked.
Many others believe India has enough laws, but what we need is an understanding of our existing laws and their implementation.
Whether or not there are explicit laws which mention that nature of attack, they're covered through various ways. They're covered in the IT Act in a major way. Hacking is a crime under the IT Act. So we do have enough laws. I don't think the problem is the laws itself. I think the problem is their understanding, their implementation, their handling by law enforcement.
India perhaps needs a nodal overpowering ministry or agency on cybersecurity. Uniformity in approach in legal frameworks, in administrative and governance mechanisms is a compelling necessity.
CERT-In has to become a much, much larger and more active body than it already is. And that can only come if the government decides to take that step.
I think what is probably missing or what needs a lot more work today is a concerted cybersecurity strategy which looks at reporting and coordination between these, within the sector as well as between the critical infrastructure sectors. For example, we have this overall body called CERT, the Computer Emergency Response, apparatus, which is there under MeitY, the Ministry of Electronics. Okay, but it's one CERT. You actually need these CERTs in the critical infra areas, and they should be able to coordinate. They should be able to ensure that incidents are reported and analyzed.
Also, CERT-In is mandated to track and monitor cybersecurity incidents in India. And very recently, I think in April, in a parliamentary response, MP Rajiv Chandrasekhar, he shared the number of attacks that cybersecurity incidents that were related to government organizations and other government-owned entities. And they shared the data for since 2016 till 2021. So they have that data. But I think what's important here is that Indian citizens who have been impacted by these data breaches be notified immediately and they are provided adequate compensation.
In an evolving digital era, it is simply not possible to completely eradicate cyber threats. But constantly enhancing our nation's cybersecurity posture and building a national framework that protects citizens from data breaches, safe cyber practices, cyber hygiene, and cyber awareness could just make India stand tall in its cyber preparedness.
To prevent this, you need a range of approaches, and one of them is really the last line of defense, which is really all the people who are end users of the site. That is where I think we have the weakest link today, because those people are not trained, and understandably and with good reason and so on, it's not easy to train tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people.
There are only two kinds of people in the world. One, who know that they have been hacked, and two, who do not know that they have been hacked. And most of the Indians are in the category of those people who do not know that they have been hacked. So I believe creating awareness is a great starting point. For that, more capacity building initiatives have to be run. Initiatives like what we are running in the form of cyberlawuniversity.com need to be encouraged. The government has already talked of coming up with a digital university, and that could help the individual users to hone their skill sets.
Mind-boggling innovations have come up in the last 20 years. We are moving into virtuality. Web 3.0 is coming up. So every day and night, the technology is evolving, concepts are changing there. Any law takes 2 to 3 years minimum to get evolved and passed by the parliament there. So, but the technology during those 2-3 years has changed a lot. Any law you do today will need to be upgraded in the next 3-4 years. That is a dilemma. That's a dilemma.
Let me give you the example of China. China in the last few years has come up with 3 distinctive national laws on cybersecurity, apart from a lot of local rules and regulations. And the ultimate aim of this national cybersecurity legal framework in China is to go ahead and strengthen the cyber sovereignty of China, and also to provide various remedies to affected persons who will get affected as a result of various cybersecurity breaches. I think India would do fascinatingly well if we were to have a specific national law on cybersecurity. I've recently written a book called New Cyber World Order Post-COVID-19, where I've argued that by the time the nations are victorious against the current and subsequent wave of COVID-19 infections, we will enter into a new cyber age, where a new cyber world order would be awaiting us. And some of the key parameters or essential characteristics of the new cyber world order would be that not only will the states become very powerful, but more significantly, cybercrime will be a daily companion of ours, and increasing cybersecurity breaches will be our new normal.